Hello there, my name is Sandri, and I welcome you in my summary of 2024, my personal summary. The idea of making some sort of wrap up of this year has been on my mind since November, and in December, during one of my Castlevania streams, the idea was set in motion, and here you have the final result of it. It's been quite a challenge for me to make this text, and it has been quite a challenge for me to voice it all over for you. But here you have the final result, and hopefully you will enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed making such a video. Mostly I will be talking about myself, about my streams and what was happening outside of them, which means I will somewhat touch my in real life stuff because they are part of my streams as well. As you heard, I'm streaming on Twitch and I have been doing this for over a year in English language. English is not my first language, the first language of mine is Russian, and you can probably hear this by accent. And streaming in English was quite a tough decision for me, but this one I never regret. I perhaps improved in this language, and I only look forward to improve myself further in it. Here and there sometimes I make mistakes or forget some words, and this happens to everyone. Only through studying and reflecting on our own mistakes we will get better. Without further ado, let's get going with the video, because it seems it's going to be quite a long one, but I don't know it just yet, so let's get to it, shall we? As it goes with everything, we will start with the beginning, but our starting point will not be January, it will be December of 2023, and there are a couple of reasons for this. The reason number uno, I started streaming in English during that month, the second half of December of 2023, and as my first game to play was Darkest Dungeon 2, it just so happened that the Binding Blade DLC, along with Crusader and Duelist, was released during this time, and I simply wished to show people the game, characters, and as much as it was possible for me to show. The Duelist is quite a complex character, and even after all these months, I'm afraid I didn't really understand how to play her properly outside of just one path, or one path and a half if we take Wanderer as a path in general. The Crusader is pretty straightforward and quite flexible, and I had some good times with him. And I remember streaming Darkest Dungeon 2 for at least a month, but after this month I realized I cannot continue it like this. The reason being that I was streaming by the time mostly on weekdays, and I had to rush off my shift simply to get home as earlier as possible, complete some rounds and to have a dinner, and then instantly jump on my PC just to stream at least one run in Darkest Dungeon 2 without failing, which was quite a challenge. Because of this, I could complete some achievements, and I thought I need to change the game. Obviously I could simply stream on weekends, which in future I was doing, but I didn't want to waste whole evening on playing Darkest Dungeon 2. Using instead of waste is much more appropriate here. And so I switched games because I wanted to stick around with my friends a bit more frequent, and I want to show some other games I really like. Meanwhile, while I was streaming on December and January, I picked on Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, and the peculiar thing about it, I decided to pick on this collection simply because at the March of 2022, on my final year in university, I accidentally decided to play Final Fantasy IV, which in USA and Europe is called Final Fantasy II because of weird release for Western players of Final Fantasy in general. I remember completing all these games, Probably I have completed Final Fantasy VI on February. There was release of an update that sped up my process in the last game, and truth to be told, I quite enjoy this game. Honestly, you can summarize these games like you have party of 4 people or 5 and randomly you will engage in the fight, lol, have fun with this. No, there is deeper these games. It's not just wow you fight people. No, in all 6 games I have played, there are unique stuff. Somewhere the story will touch you, somewhere the gameplay will touch you, and not every battle is the same. Some are tough and you cannot win them by pure brute force. In some fights you have to run away because your party member got down and you cannot just complete the fight without them, or you're wasting too much resources on just this one party member. Or enemies are a bit too strong for you at the moment. Experience in every of these fights, in most of these fights for the first time for sure, and for everyone is different, and this is what I like about these games. I found out that, for example, in Final Fantasy V, my friend was playing differently, I was playing my way, he was playing his way, someone else was playing his own way in that game, and this is what I like about Final Fantasies. They all deliver different experience for everyone. Even the first Final Fantasy, where you have a choice of 6 different classes, you can only take 4 of them, but even like this you still have your own experience with this, and this is what I cherish the most. Now, I've played Final Fantasies outside of the streams because they were mostly JRPGs, and obviously there is a lot about these games. If I were to stream these games, I think I would only finish them around March or April this year, which was not a choice for me, so I was playing them off stream, and yes, that's basically all about them. I only can touch them shortly right now because there is a lot I want to speak about these games, but this will have its moment later. I will speak about at least Final Fantasy VI later. As for streaming, since the middle of January until April I was streaming Diablo 2, and I wasn't simply streaming normal playthrough or endgame playthrough, as much of endgame is it there. The endgame, to summarize you, the endgame of Diablo 2 is simply you are going through 3 or 5 places, a bit more depending on your character, and you're farming, for example, you're farming Mephisto because he drops a lot of stuff, and Sorceress is the best in farming them, but I was thinking it's not a thing that viewers probably would like to watch, so I decided to do something else. I decided to play some random builds for casual walkthrough through normal difficulty, and I was playing joke builds, some sort of them, like memed builds like Firebomb Assassin or Poison Dagger Necro, or I was playing simply normal builds because I thought it would be interesting. Mind you, I was only doing it through normal difficulty most of the time because I always wanted to show different experience or anything like this. Diablo 2 after all is not just about farming stuff, it's about your path. This is why Diablo 2 is special in this regard, at least to me. While I was playing different characters, I was talking with my chat, and I hope chat really enjoyed it, and considering I was streaming Diablo 2 until April, I think it was worth it. Mind you though, while I was streaming Diablo 2, I was only streaming once per week, which was Saturday, and I was using the whole evening of Saturday, or at least half of the Saturday, just to stream Diablo 2 for my viewers, and it was taking from 5 to 7 hours for sure, which was quite a lot, and sometimes I couldn't finish the walkthrough in one stream, so I was taking an additional day, like Monday for example, where I was simply finishing the walkthrough. We were fine with this, and that was all about it. And I couldn't stream often, mostly because of my health. I had problems with my throat with my back, and at the moment I should assure you I'm feeling myself better, but back then I couldn't stream often or long because I couldn't probably sit on my chair, or I couldn't speak for too long because it was really challenging my throat, and that were the reasons why. Sorry if I repeat my words, it happens because I'm currently worrying about recording this. This will be simply improved with experience. The thing I forgot to mention is that after playing 6 Final Fantasy games, I decided to hop on Final Fantasy XIV. It's an MMORPG, and by the time I was hopping onto it, it got an upgraded free trial to the point I could play Vanilla main scenario, I could play Heavensward, the first expansion, and Stormblood, the second expansion. And this all was available for free trial. You could try many different jobs. Basically, free trial was showing lots of stuff for new players, and because of this I simply stick to Final Fantasy 14. Now it is December and I'm still playing it and I'm having quite enjoying it. The problem is it's an MMORPG, so it takes quite some time to play it, but still, if you have a free time to try a free trial, I would recommend it 100%. I think you will enjoy it. The only thing though, Final Fantasy XIV is story-driven game. It has lots of main scenario quests. They're quite deep at some point. They will take quite some time, so free trial is here to actually show you this story as much as possible for a new player. Later you will decide if you want to stick with it like I did. The choice is always yours. And so it happened that I started playing Final Fantasy XIV on daily basis because I was paying for my own subscription. But I couldn't stream it because I was going mostly through main scenario quest and there is nothing I could show. If I were to stream from the middle of the story, I will have to explain a lot of stuff and that will be a bit confusing to say the least, because I would also need to show this much of stuff and there will be even more questions, and why the hell will I stream Final Fantasy XIV and explain the story if one might not be interested in it. So instead I was keep playing Diablo 2 on the streams, while on weekdays I was playing Final Fantasy XIV. At some point I decided to take a chance in speedrunning Diablo 2. I remember I was preparing for this quite a while. I was watching some speedruns and my character of choice was Paladin. But at some point, after all these preparations and after trying this, I overtensed myself in speedrunning in general, to the point I had quite a headache. The headache I couldn't deal with by simply taking painkillers. So it took me at least 2 days to simply relax after overtensing myself a bit too much. And I'm not sure if I'm coming back to Diablo 2 speedrunning, but I still am enjoying speedrunning, and I have some videos where I was actually speedrunning. I remember it was Mario Advance for GBA, which is port of Mario Bros 2. I think at some point I will come back to it, but when it will happen, I'm not really sure about it. So after my poor speedrunning attempt in Diablo 2, I decided to play something different and I decided to go for Killing Floor 2, but I didn't want to just run around maps on suicidal difficulty with a bunch of randoms. No, that would be an easy way. So instead I decided to go for 100% achievement, which means I should simply get all the achievements. That's simple. But it is simple on paper and it's not simple on execution. Because like in Payday 2, for example, I have to complete every map on every difficulty. For example, if you complete the map on highest difficulty, which is Hell on Earth, there is 4 difficulty in the game. If I complete the map on this difficulty, I don't get the achievement for the same map but on lower difficulties. I will have to complete them separately, which was the worst decision I think that Tripwire agreed on, and they never fixed it. However, I still played all these maps, I played all the objectives, and I've played on every difficulty that was listed in achievement list. The hardest part was was objective maps, because you're tied to a certain area where you should stay still or escort a drone, and it was my least favorite part in whole achievement hunting, because not only I had to complete this in every difficulty, I also had to have some tactic, and that tactic should be flawless. Yeah, you still could make a couple of mistakes, I had this on my mind, but most of the time you have to act flawless. I remember on these maps, instead of playing medic, I was playing this on firebar. You have to complete on Earth achievements as all the classes, from basic to survivalist. I was playing those classes on different maps as well. Basically everything there in achievement hunting was a huge challenge where I was building up a plan, where I was playing these maps solo, and let me tell you, I had quite a fun with this, and I'm glad that after 7 years of playing the game I finally got 100% in these achievements, and occasionally I come back to the game because I still quite enjoy it. So to finish things up with Killing Floor 2, the final part of my whole achievement hunting, well, the last obstacle so to say, was an endless map. If I remember correctly, there was only one endless map you had to complete on Hell on Earth difficulty, and by completing it I mean you have to go through 25 waves. I remember it took me 3 different streams to find the correct tactic how to complete it. I tried medic, firebug, commando, anything, but at the very end I decided to try a survivalist, my least favorite class in the game. I found out that you can actually complete 25 waves with survivalist on the endless map, and it was quite a blast for me. I remember on the third stream I picked survivalist almost right away and thought like it's going to be dumb, like really dumb, that I will complete that first try. And if I actually accomplish it in the first try, I will prestige survivalist up to prestige 5. I don't remember I actually did this. You will probably see this on the screen. I completed the map on the first try and I was shocked. And so after Killing Floor 2, in the middle of achievement hunting, Hades 2, the early access, was released for everyone to try, but I took my sweet time and couple of patches before actually trying it myself for the stream. And honestly, after playing a lot of Hades 1, and after seeing this much of Hades 2 trailer, I had quite fun time in Hades 2, despite hard boss being actually hard and being actually challenging. And mind you, I was playing after some patches where the last boss was nerfed. There is also Surface, and Surface by that time only had 2 locations you could visit, and they were tough, especially because of the boss on the second area, but still it was a challenge I had fun with, and I think this is what the game tried to accomplish. And in the future we will have more grand patches like the one that updated the game. Honestly, who knows what devs have planned in the future. We will see what will they do with boons, with weapons in general, because the game has some challenge, but sometimes it feels like a whole going through some stuff. And I should add, by the way, that you cannot take your sweet time in the last location in Tartarus in Hades 2, because with each room passing you simply have more and more enemies spawning onto you, and some enemies there are even worse than satyrs, and satyrs are even there, by the way. So yeah, until some point, until July or August, I was streaming Hades 2 twice a week, and at some point I just reached a dead end. I didn't know what I wanted to stream, and this was the beginning of August, and I was sitting behind my PC and be like, what could I actually show people for the stream? Because I need to stop with Hades 2 at the moment, or I face a burnout and I don't want to do it with Hades 2. So I was thinking between some games, like Crypto the Necrodancer, Dead by Daylight, Achievement Hunting for Final Fantasy, even Dota 2 at some point, like I did with League of Legends at April, but then I decided no, this is not going anywhere. So it's a point where I took a break, like a very lengthy break, until the time is right and I could tell to myself, yeah, I can stream right now. But it was the beginning of August, almost the end of There is one thing I forgot to mention, and for this, let's revert back to the June. June was quite a peculiar month. I turned 24, and during my birthday, friends from other cities decided to move where I live for a day or two just to celebrate this day together. And honestly, I was quite surprised this actually happened, and we had quite a good time back then. Thank you from the bottom of my heart that you visited me back then. It improved my mood by a bunch. The most unexpected thing though that happened, Dead by Daylight announced a Castlevania chapter on their anniversary stream. And I was hyped, but I was also cautious in the same time because I knew what's going to happen if I raise my expectations a bit too high. So I end up laying low and wait, so I won't end up disappointed. But to be honest, this warmed up my interest towards Castlevania once again. You see, before 2015 I liked the franchise, but I have only experienced classic games, Castlevania 2, Castlevania 2, Castlevania 3 and Castlevania 4. These are 4 games I have played myself but not really complete them. Nevertheless, I like the aesthetic of the game and I like the genre in general. Although there were lots of games I haven't heard about, and randomly I stumbled upon Symphony of the Night. I was curious about, hey, what is this? Is it a new Castlevania game of some sort? Because by that time I was about to buy Lords of Shadows but was quite hesitant about it. And so when I found out about Symphony of the Night, I thought, this is not Castlevania. I looked at it, I looked at Alucard's long hair, his outfit, the castle, how you actually move around it, and I thought like, no, this is not Castlevania. And I just left the whole franchise behind me, sticking to Diablo at the moment, Dota 2 and some other games. Never did the young Andy know how wrong was he by that time, and it took entire 9 years to realize it. And so to reunite with Castlevania, I decided to start with Castlevania animated series, and I watched all 4 seasons and I had quite a blast with it. I understand it's far from original lore of the game, but I think it actually fits animated series in general. Because if we had to take the lore of the game and put it together with animated series, the animated series and the whole story of Trevor Belmont should have been finished on season 2 with Castle crumbled to dust, and that's the end of it. And right now we have Castlevania Nocturne, season 1 is finished, season 2 is about to release, and I'm interested in seeing Richter Belmont's adventures as well. While I was watching animated series, one of my friends gifted me a collection of classic games on Steam. It is called Castlevania Anniversary Collection. However, I barely touched it, and at some point on YouTube, a 7-hour long Castlevania video was recommended to me. It was called Castlevania Series Retrospective. I will put the video down in the description. It took me some days to watch it all, to digest it all, to catch up on most of the stuff that happened with the series in general, and I think it's worth of watching even if you are not familiar with Castlevania. The creator of the video made quite a job in telling most of the stuff he knows himself. He found out around the internet about the franchise, about how it was born and how it died, and now it just lives in some games such as Dead Cells or Vampire Survivors, for example, with their Castlevania DLCs. And also V-Rising that has Castlevania related stuff as well. Even though there are no new games of Castlevania, I'm surprised Konami allowed developers to. I'm enjoying playing those games myself. And so with the release of Castlevania chapter in Dead by Daylight and with the release of DS collection of these games, my slow descent into Castlevania in terms of games has just begun. But it took me 3 weeks before I could actually touch any Castlevania games. And oh boy, if it wasn't for my friend's idea, I wouldn't even consider streaming those games. So I was a bit hesitant to start any of these games. After all, I just said that I took 3 weeks to actually consider the idea of even playing these games because I wasn't really sure about it. I had some games on the background I was thinking about playing on the stream, like Elden Ring for example. Some evening I was talking with my friends and I said such a sentence, something like this. Well, now we have this big collection of Castlevania games, aside from Lament of Innocent, Curse of Darkness, Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood. These 4 games are not on Steam. And one of my friends being like, you could marathon it. It was a simple idea, and yes, at some point I actually started playing those games, those actually taking my first steps into descent into that series, looking at how it evolved, changed and such. Long story short, it took me 3 months total, from September to December. Maybe a bit less, but this roughly was 3 months. Either way, I had a blast with Castlevania games, in their own way of course. Somewhere I had skill issue and I was using save states, like Castlevania 3 for example and Bloodlines. Somewhere I was simply surprised, or if I remember correctly I was surprised with how Symphony of the Night worked and how many secrets is there. And somewhere I played Castlevania The Adventure, the Game Boy game that is not really that good. But even then, I played most of these games, dropping those 3D games I really haven't played yet. Obviously there was lots of games, but each brought their own experience. Some is pleasant, some is really not. It really baffles me that it took around 20 years in Castlevania franchise to set things right in terms of lore, with the release of Portrait of Ruin, which was the second to last game I have played on Marathon. Because before that game, the lore itself was a mess, like Contra at some point, and honestly, reading about Castlevania lore is like I was trying to get into Sonic lore. It was all the mess, like everything and nothing makes sense in the same time, and you're here, a fan of the game, and trying to see if it actually makes sense or not. So thank you Igarashi-san for actually setting things up and giving a rough idea about the lore of Castlevania. I should say it was interesting to read some stuff out by myself, finding some information. It was something. Out of most games, I have to say that Portrait of Ruin became my favorite. It was not easy, the castle is relatively short, because it was all about portals and you entering them and defeating monsters there, and the game is a bit lighthearted comparing to its predecessors, but it stuck to me actually. The music is quite enjoyable, and I should say out of all Castlevania games I have played so far, the music from Portrait of Ruin actually got stuck in my head, and Victorian Fear, Iron Blue Intention and Name Entry out of all music actually stuck there, and they filled up my playlist of music, and I'm honestly glad with this. And interesting stuff happened in the middle of Marathon. In the middle of October, Ponkel, the creators behind Vampire Survivors, announced DLC, an ode to Castlevania. And as part of Marathon, I streamed it as well. Though I couldn't show everything by that time, no boy, there was a lot to actually show, and I actually regret not taking a bit more time to actually stream the game. I think it will be worse to actually make 2 or 3 streams of Vampire Survivors, and I could actually show some fancy stuff about it, yes. And the peculiar thing that the DLC was released on 31st of October, but I streamed it that day, just one stream. Couldn't show that much because I was goofing around with people, I wasn't aiming to unlock stuff, to unlock characters, to unlock weapons. So I ditched the idea of streaming more Vampire Survivors, and that was my mistake. I opened some stuff behind the streams. I even recorded the fight you unlock as Richter Belmont, and it's uploaded on my Telegram channel, and occasionally I look back at it and oh boy, I still regret not showing it on stream, but I think at some point I showed it to my viewers and we had quite a blast. And look at this, it is December now, my marathon is finished and I'm I'm happy I could touch most of these games, and I'm sure in the near future I will be playing the 3D games, and I hope to see you on these streams as well, if you have a free time of course, because after all it is your choice if you want to come here on streams and spend some time with me, or you have your own errands to do. So you listen to this monologue of mine and probably stared at the screen with random lazy gameplay that I left on the background with pictures occasionally flying around showing some games. And you might ask me, why did you tell me all of this? And why this year was important to you? Well, to put it simply, I finally got a second wind in stuff I used to do that I liked, and even though I felt lazy about doing some of them, procrastination was taking its toll, and the burnout I faced 2 years ago was still lingering in me. Though I'm afraid I'm not fully recovered from these effects. Besides, I have a full-time job at the moment and I want to stick to it for now. Still, such a feeling was something I was waiting for such a long time. The feeling that you finally find strength into yourself to do some stuff outside of your daily basis. Like, you wake up at 6 a.m., sleeping for 5 hours, taking your sweet time for breakfast, then going for a job, sit there for 9 hours, then come back home, take some exercises for your health recovery, go take a dinner, sit behind PC, play until 1 a.m. your time, go to sleep. That was my almost everyday basis. Sometimes something different was happening between them, but that was, well, the usual stuff that was happening to me. And eventually, something or someone broke that cycle, and that someone was me and people around me, and I finally felt some strength to actually do something outside of simply playing games or simply streaming my games on Twitch and whining about, well, why nobody is watching me. The reason behind why nobody is watching me is me actually streaming some niche games or some games that are old like Castlevania, or some games that people might not really pay attention to it, but these games I truly enjoy, and I think I will better stream some niche game and enjoy myself and hope that this feeling radiates through my streams. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Obviously, something in me will change in months or years, because we're all changing after all, but this is how I feel about my streams at the moment. And oh well, how did I really get that fire back? Well, let's start from the beginning again, with Final Fantasies to be exact. So as I mentioned, Pixel Remaster has 6 games in total. While I started with Final Fantasy IV in 2022, Final Fantasy VI made me change some perspective about the world we live in and how should I look at it. You see, Final Fantasy VI has a lot of characters. It doesn't have just one protagonist or 4 protagonists, but Final Fantasy VI has lots of them. For example, you have Edgar and Sabin. The latter was tricked by his own brother, so Edgar could become a king, and Sabin could actually get his freedom he so cherished. Thus he became a monk, but he was still free in his heart. There is also Setzer. He is a gambler with an airship and one of the best introduction. I don't think I should get into the details for it, because without context it actually sounds weird. You will probably see it by yourself or possibly on one of my streams if I will ever consider streaming Final Fantasies again. But this time I will actually start from the third game and we'll see how it goes. Who knows? And there is also Celes, who went out of her way to uphold the Empire and bring peace to the world. But there are 2 characters who were quite the contrast if you put them together, Terra and Kefka. Terra is a witch who tried to find herself in this world. What was the meaning of friendship, trust, and most of all, emotions? The love, the fear, the anxiety, all of these human emotions that we all have here. She doesn't know the meaning of this because since she was a child, she was a slave to an empire because of her unnatural ability. In Final Fantasy VI, there is no magic, and suddenly, boom, there is a woman who knows magic and stuff. And of course, the leader of the empire wanted to use the witch for his own ambitions. This ambition being to control the whole world. Later, Terra finds all the answers she was looking for through the adventure with our characters and through some people in the empire, because after all, not all the people in the empire are actually evil dudes. Some of them still question the ethic of the emperor, but they're simply following orders and you cannot really blame them for this. So yeah, later Terra finds out the answers for her questions. She understood the value of keeping people close, trusting them, going after of their way to protect them, because you simply love them, you're taking care of them. The world is destroyed, but people together can build a better one in their life, as short as it might seem. And on the opposite side, there is Kefka. He tricked the Emperor to get to become a god of magic and all existence in the world that he ruined by himself. He wanted to defy the whole life, the whole cycle of it, because what is a life if in the end you simply die and everything that you build, that you cherish, it will all be destroyed. He was choosing who lives, who dies, when or why. The antagonist did not value the life of others, but in the same time he could not understand why after all these destructions that he caused, people still cling to that little that they have, trying to build something up, knowing it will be destroyed in the near future by his own whim. And so-called god, Kefka, really liked to destroy things, and all this destruction, pain he was causing, it was all for his own amusing, and he didn't care for anything else. In the end of Final Fantasy VI, Terra and her comrades come to oppose Kefka's tyranny, to save the world from a mad fool, to start it anew, so people could finally look up and see the sun shining on them, rather than living in constant fear under gloomy sky. The fight against Kefka is a fight against nihilistic views our antagonist had. With his defeat, a brighter tomorrow becomes more promising. With the completion of the game, I was digesting what I just played, and unfortunately at first the game did not stick to me. Yeah, I just played it, I just completed it, I liked Dancing Mad, but that was all about it and I didn't know what to say about it. Until one day I was browsing through YouTube, looking up some Final Fantasy VI stuff and stumbled upon a channel that was doing long plays. Final Fantasy VI was their favorite game. I watched some stuff, I found some interesting things to say the least, such as Celeste saving her grandfather, Sid. I didn't know that it was possible. I accidentally killed Sid instead of saving him, and experienced quite a scene. And I found it in the video I just mentioned. So at some point I decided to check under comment section in that video I was watching, and I read out that the guy who actually made this video was long gone from this world, and that comment was made by his father. To think of this moment, that you see how to save one guy from the game by the guy who actually died, that picture struck me, and after some moments, Final Fantasy VI, with all its music, with all its story, because I was revisiting the story once again, just to see if I skipped on some stuff. It actually made me change some views on my life and my choice of words, and I think it's all thanks to this game exactly, and me being curious about some secrets and scenes I have probably missed myself. And now Dancing Mad, the main menu, some other themes from Final Fantasy VI, as it goes with Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, they are now part of my playlist I occasionally listen to. And honestly, I have some more to speak about Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors is an interesting case in my opinion. Yeah, it looks like a pixel game where you become a bullet hell by yourself, and where you don't do much but move around collecting weapons. At some point the screen looks like a mess and that's all about it. And yeah, at some point you're correct, the game is made like this. You spend some time finding items and you stand still admiring your work. Sure. However, in my opinion, Vampire Survivors is a bit more than just a game. It's a dedication that made this game rise from the ground. From the game that its developer, Luca, on the first days was simply working on it on weekly basis, to a game that made him found a company, released 3 DLCs, and this October an Order to Castlevania was released. That's a really long road. Luca, as I mentioned him before, is the creator, and once he gave a video interview, and I watched it once, but I remember some stuff from it. He answered on some questions about himself, about how did he really come to idea of creating Vampire Survivors and what was his main inspiration. Spoiler alert, it was Castlevania. And the hardships he faced while he was working on the game. First by himself, then slowly but surely getting more people into it. More coders, more compositors to write music. Of course, today we can see the result of Lucas' dedication for creating a fun-based Castlevania game that based on Castlevania games somewhat the enemies and weapons and characters, but still it grew into its own game. When Operation Guns was released, it was around May if I remember correctly, I knew it won't take long until we get Castlevania related DLC, and oh boy did we get one. As I said, it was released on October, and obviously there is more than 20 characters, there is a bit more than just big castle, there is more weapons and yada yada. You're going through unlocking stuff, then you get Richter Belmont in your hands, and then you can fight Dracula, but yeah, I wanted to show the fight, but something tells me you probably won't unlock this fight by yourself. If you have Order to Castlevania in your library, and you have some free time to play the game occasionally, I totally recommend playing this DLC and see the whole final fight by yourself. I shall say though, the credit scene you see after that fight, it feels like a reward. I don't remember when was the last time I felt myself being happy on seeing the credit scene by completing the game. It was like a feeling I haven't felt for a long time. But enough talking about the DLC. I think I described it as much as possible for myself, so I wouldn't spoil a lot of things. Originally I had a lot of stuff to say here. The story behind the creation of Vampire Survivor, for me, is the story of persistence and willpower that Luca had during the development of such game. From a game that he was working on weekly basis to the point that Konami helped the company with a couple of DLCs such as Operation Guns and Ode to Castlevania. Vampire Survivor was collecting awards on Game Awards, and soon, if I remember this part correctly, it will receive its own animated series. And seeing the announce of Castlevania DLC, I think that this series has some potential, but we shall see about this. And honestly, to all of you, the story behind Vampire Survivors, the stuff I unlocked in this game actually was a nudge for me to make this so-called summary of this year. Yeah, it might sound a bit stupid, but I just witnessed and heard what a man can achieve if he actually puts a hand to it. You cannot make lots of stuff in this world work by doing nothing. In your own hands to actually achieve some. In the future, probably, I will watch this summary again, reflect on it, probably cringe and realize that I made some mistakes, I could word some stuff different. or something like this. But my hope is that you, the viewer, do not cringe that much from listening to my monologue and probably gather some stuff from my experience I just told to you. Though, to be honest, I think some words I just told to you maybe make little sense. But this year is special for me. 2024 is a tough year, and so was every year before that, and so will be all the other years in the future. We will face our adversities, we will overcome them, we will have our own moments when we will laugh, and we will have our own moments when we will cry. This is part of humanity, and we should hold to these emotions. At least this is how I think. For me, as I probably said already, 2024 is special, especially because of these games I have played this year and how many stuff I have opened to myself comparing to previous year or 2 years or even bit more. And 2024 felt for me like 2015, and lots of stuff happened that year too. Through hardships, you and me, we become stronger, we learn new stuff, and we get more pleasant moments we cherish, we hold on, and we remember from time to time, as well as those moments that are not that pleasant for us. But as I said, we learn from them. There is a phrase I heard in Final Fantasy XIV. It was something like, I look for the brightest future, but I do not avert my eyes from the harsh present. Take as words as you will. I take it this way. The world is not just doom and gloom that we live in, as we tend to think sometimes. There is always a bright tomorrow that awaits us, a sunshine that pierces darkest clouds, that will light up our path. And so I shall say we finally came to an end of this video. It's probably a long video and sorry if it took so much, but I hope you enjoyed listening to random guy rambling about his year and his experience. I hope I delivered the main thoughts and how did I come to this. Once again, thank you for watching and I hope you will have a good day and you will have a pleasant New Year celebration. I wish you all the best in 2025 and I will see you all next year. Have a good one.